Okay, here's the second half of fermentation of carbohydrates. In the last video, we had talked about the fermentation tubes, the ones that turn yellow, produce acid and gas. Now I'm going to do the MRVP, and the reason that I waited on the MRVP was because if you refer to page 95, it says that it needs to incubate for at least 48 hours. And if I had done it yesterday, it wouldn't have been quite 48 hours and we would have gotten a negative result, even if it's positive. And the reason that is, if you look on page 94, on figure 3, there's a graph that shows that the ones that produce acetonin begin to do it after 48 hours, anywhere between 48 and 72. So I wanted to wait a while before we did that. Now what I have here is I had the 4 tubes, and what I did was I went ahead and did the VP reagents already, because if you look on page 95, let's see, number 6, it says allow the tubes to stand for 15 to 30 minutes. Well, I didn't want to wait 30 minutes in the video, so I went ahead and did it ahead of time so that we could actually see if there was going to be a result. It's kind of like one of those cooking shows where they show you how to cook something, but then they have a prepared dish for you. So I went ahead and did that already. So if we start on page 95, remember we inoculated 4 MRVP tubes. We did 2 with E. coli and 2 with Enterobacter. So we had a total of 4. Now, we're going to put into each of the 2 of the tubes, 1 E. coli and 1 Enterobacter, we're going to put the methyl red, okay? In the other 2, 1 E. coli and 1 Enterobacter, we're going to do the VP reagents, okay? Now, another thing I want to point out is number 7. It says that you need to have a control. So you're going to have empty tubes of MRVP to do a control. So what I'm going to do is, since I've already done the MRVP part of it, I'm going to show you how to do it using the controls. The reason that we're going to do a control is because it's kind of hard to tell the difference between pink and red and pink and not pink, okay? So with these reagents, we have to do a control. So you need to get that started right away, because you also have to let the control sit for 15 to 30 minutes, okay? So on number 3, it says add 5 drops of methyl red to each of the types of bacteria. So what I'm going to go ahead and do is I'm going to add them. Here's my E. coli and here's my Enterobacter. Now the methyl red is right here, and you do just add 5 drops. Now we don't need to worry so much about sterile technique, because we're not going to, I can't count and talk at the same time. So there's 5 drops in the E. coli, and then here's 5 drops . Okay. Now we're also going to put 5 drops in a control, because sometimes you'll get kind of a pinkish color and you'll wonder if that's positive or negative. So we want to make sure that we do a control so we can really see the difference between positive and negative. So if you look here, this is the negative control, and I don't know if you can tell or not, but there's some reddish orangish color to it. That's not positive. It truly, truly needs to be red to be considered positive. So you can see one of mine came up positive and one of them came up negative. Okay, so that's for the methyl red. Now, for the VP, it says to add 12 drops of VP reagent 1 and 3 drops of VP reagent 2. VP reagent 1 is kind of a carcinogen, so you want to be really careful with it. I mean, we're always careful and never want to ingest anything in the lab, but I just want to make sure you're careful with that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to demonstrate it on this uninoculated tube, even though we're going to do it with inoculated tubes. So what I'm going to do is I already have these pipettes out, and this VP reagent, like I said, is kind of, it smells like formaldehyde, so kind of keep that in mind, that it can be a little strong, okay? And it says to add 12 drops. Ooh. So I'm going to do it to this tube here. and then 3 drops of the other reagent. Now these may be in dropper bottles when we go to do the labs. I'm not sure if they'll be in these bottles or not. Okay. Okay, now it says to take a piece of parafilm and cover the top because we're going to give it a little bit of a shake. And this parafilm is seals at the top. You don't want to flip it upside down, you just want to give it a shake. Okay? And then it says, keeping the lids off, take the parafilm off and let it breathe and get oxygen for about 30 minutes. That's why I went ahead and did this ahead of time. So what we have here is there's a positive and negative result. Now you're not going to be able to see in the video here, but we'll also do a control. So I would have done the same to this tube, another tube over here as a control. And if you get a pinkish red color at the top, that's positive. If you don't, that's negative. And once again, when you do the control, you'll have something to compare it to. So that's the VP test. That's the second part of the fermentation of carbohydrates.